Welcome back to the second episode of How We Love. I'm Robin Lane, psychotherapist, and together you and I will continue exploring the many ranges of love, be they romantic, familial, platonic, and most especially self love, and how, in one way or another, love is always part of our survival story. Now, joining me today is actress Eve Austin, whose life reads like an epic, marked by daring escapades, daring escapes, incredible triumphs, and whose life has run the gamut of every kind of love. Welcome, Eve Austin.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
So, Eve, I know that you've had a successful marriage and children and a career, but I want to go to your backstory because your backstory is how you got here to the United States of America, and it starts with your mom and your dad escaping the Nazis, correct?
That is correct.
You want to talk about your mom's story? Let's start with her.
Okay. So my mom was born in Vienna, and at the time the war came, she was a student. Her parents were at home, and they didn't have the kind of communication that students would have. And my mother tried to get her parents to leave with her. This was right before Kristallnacht in Vienna. And her parents refused to go. They said, nothing is going to happen here. Your father, meaning my grandfather, was on the side of the Germans in World War One, and no one is going to disturb them. It has nothing to do with us being Jewish. So my mother knew there was imminent danger, and what she decided to do was to escape Vienna without telling her parents and do it with two students that she studied with. She was studying to be a radiology nurse. And what they did was, in fact, go through the borders of Yugoslavia, which at the time was not taken over. And they were hidden by farmers on the way that you had to pay to get them to take care of you so you wouldn't get caught. From Yugoslavia, she found boats that were basically tin cans and they were not legal uh, to go on the long journey by ship to what is now Israel.
From
And
Yugoslavia.
from Yugoslavia, which was across from Italy. And I think that the boat, we don't have full records of this, but I think the boat actually left from Italy. I was researching that, but they don't have much because it was all illegal. Nothing was in the records. There were 11 such ships that went. Some of them made it, some of them didn't. At times, they had to switch mid-seas. I'm not sure how long the journey was for her. But she was very young. She was like 19. And the idea of escape for her was to rescue her parents once she got to freedom and try, marry someone that was local to the area so that she could have her parents brought legally to what would become Israel.
And so tell me what happened.
Well, she was picked up by an underground group called a Yirgun at the time. They gave all the passengers, they had to swim to shore. The younger people had to swim to shore, and the older people went in boats. And they were picked up by this underground group and taken to like an auditorium like place and given clothing and given jobs where they had to go through areas that they were shot at. So there were buses that were had covered windows, metal that went over the windows so that
Who is shooting at them, Eve?
well, it was the conflict of the Arab world and what is now Israel. There were also the British mandate was happening at the time, and Britain had rule over the area.
So it
So
was really Britain that didn't want them in.
Britain didn't want them in, and neither did the crossing of borders of different lands that were not Jewish lands at the time.
Well, she must have been quite something, your mom.
She must have been frightened and disturbed, but at 19, I guess you have a lot more bravery than you do when you're later on, but you never know. Her whole life was about survival. Um,
And so then what happened?
well, she remained in what would become Israel 11 years later. She started getting, there were letters coming through the Red Cross. They were like postcards, and you could every 6 months get some kind of notice during the war about, your relatives, and they were open. You had to write, you couldn't write any hidden messages or anything like that. So for the first 2 or 3 years, she heard from her parents every 6 months, and then she would write back on the back of the postcard that that everything is well, not to worry, etc., that type of thing. I actually have some of those documents still.
Oh my goodness, that's museum quality.
It is, and I'm planning on actually donating it to, I haven't decided where yet, but donating it to museums that carry Jewish history, because it is a part of history and it is true. So while she was there, while she was in Israel, well, it wasn't Israel yet, but while she was there, she you met a lot of people. She worked, and she met a man who was he was a native to the area, and they married. And then she applied for her parents to come back, or to get them to the land. And
You get them to Israel.
well, it wasn't Israel then, but yes. So what happened was the Red Cross letter stopped. There was no more communication with the parents, and she received a letter from the British mandate saying, yes, you're married to someone from here, but you're not from here, and you have to leave the country,
Oh, you're
which
kidding.
no, which she did not do. She
What, did
stayed
you go into hiding?
pretty much, pretty much. I mean, the thing is basically her life was in danger. I mean, anybody that emigrated uh, during that time, their life was in danger. Nobody was, friendly. There was no friendly fire there. So she remained there. She eventually became divorced.
Why? Why did she get divorced?
She had a lot of problems with this man's mother. That was treating her like she was the
Okay, enough said. Okay.
no, it's not, that's enough said.
Yeah,
At any
mother-in-law
rate,
said it.
she needed to leave because she wanted to find out what had happened to her parents because those letters stopped. The only person that she knew of that survived was her sister, who was 13 years older and who had escaped to England with her two little girls. And once you were able to get out of before war started in Vienna, you were able to still, if you had papers that you could work somewhere else, if someone was sponsoring you, you could still get out. And that's how her sister got out and
Did she go
settled in
to England?
England. Pardon me?
Did your mom go to England?
My mother went to England to find out what happened to her parents. While she was in England, she met my father. And my father told her that because she didn't have a visa, and at this point, Israel was in existence, she didn't have a visa to go to other countries besides England. So he offered to go into Vienna and see what he could find out about her parents. While that was happening, her visa expired. So now she was basically stranded in England. My father went to find what happened to the parents. In those days, they did not have the records. We have since found the records of, when I say we, I have found the records. My mother passed away without knowing whatever happened to her parents.
Oh, how awful.
So she lived with that the rest of her life.
Oh,
Basically,
God, that's horrible.
it's beyond comprehension for people like me that have had it so wonderful in this country, when we finally got here. Um, the so she was stranded there. She had her sister. There were ways to hide, I suppose. But and this was, after the war, after the camps were liberated. In the meanwhile, um, she had this torrid love story with my dad, and
Sure.
and they together moved to Germany, where a lot of people moved to where they had no home.
What was your dad like? That
My father was a an amazing personality. He was a very outgoing man. People loved him. He used to sing and he used to dance and he used to be a lover of life and quite a player in life. And
that's where you get your entertainment background from, you think?
I don't think it was my mom. She was very after all these adventures which go further than this. She was really a psychologically a total mess. And she was all about security and wanting to make sure that
Well,
by
she
the
was
time,
suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, which they didn't diagnose back then.
of course they didn't even know what it was.
Right.
And she was just till the right for the end of her life, she never recovered from this emotionally, or even physically. Um, my father,
And yet, with all that stress that she carried with her, your dad fell in love with her.
well, she was a beautiful woman and a beautiful soul. There was nothing not to fall in love with.
Well, men don't fall in love with souls. I have not found that to be.
But he saw that she was a kind, warm, loving person.
She must have been very pretty.
She was gorgeous. She was
Yeah.
absolutely gorgeous. And she did not look, she looked like she could have been German. She was blonde, blue hair, blue-eyed. Yeah, and yeah, she was very beautiful, and she loved people. She just wanted to do good for people, and she had a very soft heart for anyone that went through this type of marginalization, whatever the race or creed was at the time. She
I
taught.
think I think the worst thing about not knowing what happened to your loved ones is what you imagine.
Well, she imagined that they were gone, but at that time she didn't know for sure.
What I'm saying to you is what you imagine because you
Of
can
course.
imagine the most awful things.
Of course. And then on top of it, she's the one that escaped despite them telling her, that she should stay there.
That you had
So,
that guilt.
yeah, that's survivor guilt on top of everything.
But the
So,
marriage was so what? How did the marriage go?
go ahead.
How was the marriage?
The marriage was an interesting marriage. My father, being a player, kind of continued his shenanigans a bit. And he also escaped. My dad escaped from Vienna to England around the same time, but there's a big age difference. And he got his entire family into England, actually had to go in front of a magistrate to be able to stay because they were kind of stowaways on a ship. And he managed to get them to stay, and he opened a restaurant with his first wife, and he had a good life and had children before he met my mom. And
So
as far
hold
as
on. So when he met your mom, he was married?
he was separated from his wife, he wasn't divorced.
I didn't
Uh,
even know that back then people got divorced.
well, she wasn't eager to give him a divorce, especially after she knew that he had someone else. My dad was always a player, so he was asked to leave the house by his first wife. And then my mother came along, and then she decided that she wanted him to come back, and it was kind of too late. Um, so
My darling girl, there's so much drama in your background. It's unbelievable.
it really is. And I can talk about it like normally because I wasn't there to witness this.
But so much drama,
So much drama and trauma for the both of
of
them.
course. So
Uh,
when did he finally get divorced, and when did he and your mom start living together?
well, my parents started living together before my father got divorced.
Nobody did that back then. They just, right? They just didn't.
They didn't, but under the trauma of war, it's amazing what people do.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so, no, it was completely inappropriate, to so to speak. Although they brought me up as very appropriate. They were very careful that I learned the right things, when I put quotes around that. Uh,
So where you born?
I was born, and during that time, Jewish people had to find any way they could to make a living and to start a new life. And there were many Jews that emigrated to different countries, such as Germany at the time was a good one. Everybody spoke the language, and there was a community of Jewish people there.
Is
And
that where you were born in Germany?
I was born in Germany. I was born 5 years after their love affair began.
Were they legally married at that time?
They were legally married by the time I was born.
Okay. So you were born in Germany, and then what?
And then the idea was to be able to emigrate to the United States, which was a very rough road because, it was very Jewish people couldn't really emigrate. They had a quota for how many Jewish people could come into the country.
You know
And
what that quota was?
no, I do not.
I didn't know
Uh,
that.
but I mean, it's like a certain amount of people, but they were coming in from all over the world because nobody had a home.
Right.
And everybody was displaced. So but aside from the Jewish issue, it was also an issue in immigration at the time. Like Harry Truman was a president when he finally signed this quota, because prior to that, nobody was allowed in. So the journey to the US had to do with going for my father to go from country to country, trying to find a way to get to the United States and get sponsored by someone in the US that he would be able to work for them. And that journey took 10 years.
Oh my God.
And
And were you part of that? Were you
yeah,
going from country to country?
I was going from country to country. I was I was a baby. I didn't know. From the age of 0 to the age of 10. I guess there's no age 0, but from the time I was born till I was 10, we went, I lived in Germany, in Vienna, in England, in Chile, and in Mexico. And finally, from Mexico, my father found somebody to sponsor him, and we were able to come to the United States.
And where did you go?
I landed in Manhattan, in New York City, which is where I've stayed for the rest of my days.
You remember that?
Pardon me?
You remember that?
I remember, yes, I remember vague things such as having to go to school in America, public school, where they graduated me to a grade higher than I should have been in because I didn't speak English. I had no records from my schools. I was in Chile for 2 years and in Mexico for four. So the last 6 years, I was 10 when I got here. So from the time I was born to the time I was four, I was in all different countries, and then 2 years in Chile, 4 years in Mexico, which meant that I learned how to speak. I spoke German first and then Spanish. And when I came to America, we all had to learn English.
No
And
wonder you're so adaptive. When I
well,
think of your childhood and I think of mine, I feel like an idiot, you know?
no, you shouldn't feel like an
No
idiot.
wonder, no wonder. I mean, you're so adaptive.
Well, this is the thing. We were in the middle of real issues here. And people that were in denial, that were at risk, were eliminated, like my grandparents. We know now I know now, my mother never learned that. Maybe it was better for her not to know that they were around 1941, they were taken to a camp in Latvia and eliminated. Uh, and so was the rest of my family, and pretty much everyone in my family from on both sides. Basically, I would say 80% of my family was eliminated by the Nazis. You have to do what you have to do to survive. But one of the biggest cautionary tales is the analogy that I make, that people were in denial that nobody could ever do this to them. Jewish people were in denial. And now today, Jews are at risk again. And many people, especially in America, are in denial. because they've never experienced this and they don't believe that it could happen.
Yeah.
This is where we are in the world today.
Let's move on to that from that to you're growing up and you're getting married. How,
Yeah, so,
how, did
so
how did that come about?
the biggest issue as far as having a life in America was the language problem, being a young girl, not feeling like part of the unit because, kids are not nice,
You must have felt
especially if
like
you're
an
a foreigner.
outsider. You had to feel like an outsider.
I was very much felt like an outsider. I went to school. My parents started thriving a little bit more because my father had a job. I went to camp, all of it without speaking, just learning English in that first year and an accent. I was fortunate enough to go to the High School of Art and Design. I had wanted to be an actress all my life, really, and my parents said,
How come? How come?
so I didn't know why I wanted to be an actress. I just knew that I had to do this, and this was what I was meant to do. A lot of children don't know that, but they feel it. My parents said, you cannot be an actress because you have to make a living, and there's no way we can support you. So I went to art and design with a portfolio in order to become an art teacher, which is what my parents wanted me to do. Many years later, went not that many years later, but I went to college as an art student, and my dream was to get married and have children. I thought my dream of being an actress were gone. As it turned out, my parents uh, ended up going back to Germany. I was alone here in the United States, and I had to find my way. So
Wow.
I started working very young. I went into advertising. I actually became advertising director at Diane von Furstenberg in her first incarnation. And that's when I met my husband on a blind date. My husband was, perfect in terms of a good person with a lot of potential, with a nice education, who wanted to take care of me. And that safety that I needed was provided by him. I had my two children.
Had to be terribly important at that time. That safety.
It was monumental. There's
Yeah.
no other way that I would have felt safe based on my training, my background.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I had no siblings that I lived with, so I had no one except my parents.
And they were gone. They were in another country.
Yeah, and what happened was once I had my children and I had that dream, happening, I started to go to school to study acting. And I was in my 30s already when I started. And that was a while ago. And I fully embraced the business. I fully embraced uh, the performance, part of it. I became part of that community. I've never looked back, and I have never regretted it.
So
And
of all of the people and things you've loved, one of the things you've loved the most is the theater, correct? Is acting.
that is totally correct. I would say that it's
Passion.
a major passion that has never gone away, that has never died, and that has never failed me. That doesn't mean I get work all the time, but to be part of a community like this is a privilege and it's a noble profession. And it's something that I find the kindest, most wonderful people are in this industry that are artists. And that basically.
Tell me about some of the acting work that you've done.
Well, right now I have a film that's on Apple Plus and Amazon and various other platforms.
What's the name of it so we can
It's
watch it?
called Infidelity.
Infidelity.
Yes, it's two words, and it stars Chris Parnell from Saturday Night Live. It stars Dennis Haysbert, people that we really all know and love, Cara Buono, Willow Shields.
And who do you play?
I play the best friend of the character that Chris Parnell plays. I'm kind of morphing into a David Bowie type character. I play It's wild
What does that
because
mean?
you've seen me and you know my work, and that's not the usual that I play. But yeah, so that's what I play in that. I've also started creating my own content, and now that movie that I'm mentioning, I was executive producer of, and I'm moving into that world. So part of it is because I have a little bit more um, control, let's say, of the parts that I play, where I get cast, what I want to do. And basically, I want to spread love. I want to spread love and healing and creativity in the world. And the only way I think I can do that is by creating my own.
Well, thank you. You are truly inspirational, and it's been a pleasure to have you on this.
Pleasure to have you have me on this, and thank you so much.
Bye, Eve.
Bye bye.